welcome in. Latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on them Twitter streets. And there's our great friend, Steven Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Happy early signing period to you, Steven.
Mike, happy signing day. Doesn't really feel like it, does it? Early signing day, I should say. I can also just break some news, Mike. I did some reporting this morning, and I can confirm that Mike is not taking the Penn State job. So we can all rest assured that Mike will be here to continue to run the SEC streets with that SEC podcast, and he and Cousin Shane continuing world dominance.
Right. So, but hey, if the price is right, Steven, my ass is gone to Happy Valley. I'm just letting you know it.
I just want a buyout, Mike. I mean, shoot, you could fire me after one game. Give me $10 million. You wouldn't ever hear from me again, right?
No doubt. But, Steven, I kid because I can't let these great cousins down. And there's no greater cousin than literally 1 minute into the show, we got JR gifting.
Legend, Cousin JR has done it again.
Thank you, JR. He gifted Mr. Down South Georgia. Mr. Down South Georgia, welcome to
the family.
Yeah. Fired up for some SEC championship game discussion. So Steven and I are going to dive into that. He's going to make his prediction for the game. There's a lot of pressure on you, Steven. Don't forget, you are tied with the cousins. I have already reached out to a cousin to make his selection for the SEC championship. I wanted to ask Cousin JR, the legend. I wanted to ask Steven Up, our other legend. But they're a little too biased, Steven. We can't ask a Georgia man or an Alabama man to pick because it'll be too obvious. And I don't want Steven to be cheating and try to win this crown over a diehard cousin. So we'll see if you can take the lead or if you blow it during this is the championship for the picks too.
Man, I don't want to be like Hugh Freeze and just keep saying we're so close. We were so close to winning this thing, Mike. I got to get over the hump and I got to win this thing. Is this a Florida man making this prediction?
It is not. Well, the person I've asked, shout out JP, the legend. He's not accepted the invitation just yet, but he's an Oklahoma man. So I felt that was perfectly impartial for this one.
Yeah, that's good. I was trying to ask if there was like a Georgia or Alabama fan that was going to make that pick. That way maybe I could pick the other side of it and take the title here. So see, I was kind of on the fence about a prediction, trying to maybe ask some questions about the guest picker this week.
Yeah, I mean, I see the game you're trying to play here, Steven. But we're going to do that. We're also going to do team grades for each team following the conclusion of the regular season here in the SEC. So we're going to hit on all the teams. But hey, you mentioned Hugh Freeze. I assume you saw either the interview or at least the headlines or what have you. So he went on with old David Pollack, and I didn't watch it. I won't click on anything with Hugh Freeze on the title, but apparently, just based on the reaction from all the people, he said the line, Steven, we were close, ever so close. So is someone going to give him another chance, you think?
Mike, I think his name is probably going to come up in some of these searches. I don't think anybody should give him an FBS head coaching job. I think just based upon, I mean, you can say close all you want. As somebody with a background on offense, your offense was pretty offensive this year. So, it is interesting to think about some of these G5 jobs and to see the turnover. Like Alex Golesh going to Auburn. You see Brian Hartline is hired at South Florida. You do wonder if some of these G5 jobs that are some of the better ones maybe get tired of changing coaches. And so they do hire like a Billy Napier, who I think might fit better at the G5 level, or they maybe take that call from Hugh Freeze. So Mike, if I'm Memphis or I'm any of these other schools looking for a head coach, if Hugh Freeze is calling me, I am just not answering the phone. I'm leaving that text unread.
Just say you're close to getting to Hugh, but you just can't. We didn't get you over the finish line. It is what it is. You know what?
He got all that money, Mike. He can just hit the golf course every day, right?
He's just eager. All right, but hey, one other thing I wanted to ask Steven on because he knows this stuff better than anybody. The college football playoff rankings. Steven, what was your reaction? And I'm in the process of uploading the rankings, so the cousins, I'm sure they've all seen it by now, but just so we can discuss it, what was your biggest takeaways from I believe they're calling it the penultimate, I'm sure I probably butchered that, but next to last rankings here in the college football playoff?
Mike, we can call it thank goodness it's the last Tuesday night ranking so we don't have to deal with this word salad coming out of the committee. Mike, I think my first impression was a little surprised that Texas A&M fell behind Ole Miss. I thought Texas A&M would stay ahead of Ole Miss. I thought that was a little bit harsh by the committee. I'm glad the committee did not penalize Ole Miss for losing Lane Kiffin, but I do think just when you compare those two teams, I think given that Texas A&M should probably be 6 and Ole Miss at 7. I also think Alabama is now secure in the field. Like barring a blowout loss to Georgia, the committee moving them to 9 basically solidifies this team in the field. So, Mike, 5 SEC teams look like they are on track to make the playoff. If also you kind of do kind of a projected bracket, you start looking at Ole Miss, definitely going to host a playoff game. Texas A&M, very good shape to host a playoff game. And then probably either Oklahoma or Georgia or Alabama. Like this SEC championship game will kind of set the pecking order. But the SEC teams are going to get some pretty solid home matchups. The one thing I am watching for is if you're Texas A&M and you're sitting there at the 7 and you see who's at 10, and that's Notre Dame. And if Alabama loses, I do wonder if they might slide behind Notre Dame so we don't get that rematch of the Texas A&M Notre Dame game in the first round of the playoff. I think Texas A&M is underseeded, and I do not think we need to see the rematch. Let's get Texas A&M in Alabama in the first round if Alabama loses on Saturday.
And pardon my ignorance here, Stephen, but at one time, wasn't there discussion, and I could be completely mistaken, but wasn't there some discussion of them trying to avoid rematches in the playoff, or am I incorrect there?
I believe it's kind of, I guess the good way to put it is there's no set in stone thing that they try to avoid the rematches. My kind of guidance on this has always been like, if it's close, why not avoid the rematch? We've already seen it one time, but I think the committee really doesn't take into account like the rematch factor. They're just trying to rank the teams. And frankly, they're probably not looking ahead to this week and trying to project. They're just saying on paper, here's what we think so far, which is key because there is kind of one little debate, and this kind of factors into Alabama. You know, if Alabama loses, they slide probably behind Notre Dame. Well, if BYU wins, they're in the field. That kicks Notre Dame out. That's why Alabama sliding ahead of Notre Dame was important last night. It gives them a buffer. If they get blown out, you could maybe see them falling out, but who is it? Like, is Miami going to jump in when they didn't play a game? Are you really going to penalize a team that played in the SEC championship? So I just don't see, I think Alabama is safely in the field. The question for me is like, is it Notre Dame? Is it BYU? Is it Miami in that last spot? And then for the SEC teams, what's the seeding and who gets the bye? Is it Georgia or is it Alabama and from the SEC?
Is there any scenario here where Texas could get in if, say, Bama gets blown out, BYU gets blown out, Marcus Freeman leaves for Penn State? If we could dock Ole Miss, can we not dock Notre Dame? And then Miami coach, he gets caught smuggling drugs. You know, again, not saying he's doing this stuff, but I'm saying in a hypothetical situation here, could we see Texas? Or are they going to need that type of miracle to get in?
Mike, they would need the mother lode of all miracles, and like it would be some kind of crazy scenario like that. If they had jumped above Miami, then perhaps you could kind of chart a path. Like, okay, BYU gets blown out, Alabama gets blown out, maybe they get their way in. Honestly, Mike, I think their playoff percentages are probably like 0.0001%. They're most likely headed to the Citrus Bowl to probably play Michigan, which would be a pretty good bowl game if it works out.
So sadly, are we realistically going into this final rankings? Are we basically just seeing who's in between Notre Dame, BYU, and Miami?
Yes, that's where, and also should note further down the field, the ACC champion. If it's Duke, Does Duke get in over the field over James Madison, or does James Madison win? We get 2 G5 teams and no ACC teams. So really the drama is kind of sorting out those bye weeks at the top with what happens with Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Alabama. The Big 12 championship game will tell us whether 1 or 2 Big 12 teams get in, and then whether or not, is it Notre Dame in that final at-large spot? Is it Alabama? And then, of course, the ACC. So there's not a ton of drama here. It feels like we know, most of the at-large selections. There's really one at-large spot that's up for grabs, and right now Notre Dame holds that.
Could you see, is there any way we could do something where, or will there be action? Because it seems asinine to me, Stephen. I don't follow ACC, but we got number 12 in the country, Miami, and they're not in the conference championship. We got Notre Dame, which doesn't have to play in a conference championship for some reason. Could there come a time, do you think, where they try to resolve that? Because it just seems stupid that we're waiting for Virginia Duke to figure out if Miami and Notre Dame. I mean, it's none of this makes any sense to me.
Mike, I'll start by saying this. I think it's completely ridiculous that there was. So last night on the show, Hunter Yurachek said, they could evaluate teams after an idle week. And basically what the thought would be like some kind of domino effect. And you're talking, okay, Boise State played Notre Dame. What if Boise State gets blown out by UNLV? Would that hurt their resume? If you didn't think they were a better team, and this being Miami right now, why in the heck does a game, Boise State matter for Notre Dame's resume? So to me, if you think they're ahead, it shouldn't even be a debate. We've kind of clarified the Notre Dame Miami thing. But to your point, and I think kind of where this is going is two things. Number one, the ACC probably screwed up their tiebreakers. They probably should have defaulted to the fact that the team that they probably didn't envision a scenario where Miami would be 12 and be like on their 5th tiebreaker and not in the conference championship game. The other side of this is, Mike, and I think where this is going, seeing Texas, seeing Miami, seeing the controversy we're going to get. A few weeks ago, the deadline to expand the playoff next year was pushed back. So the playoff and ESPN has to notify ESPN what the format's going to be for 2026. That deadline was this week. It was pushed back just a few weeks ago. My guess is that there's all these 24 team formats. There's a 16 team format that's been thrown around. I think the automatic qualifiers and 24 team is a massive mistake. But I do wonder if this year's bracket causes maybe everybody to start to hit the panic button a little bit and we get to 16 next year. It's going to take a lot of agreement right now because it doesn't seem like the SEC and Big Ten are close. But I think given that conferences are larger, maybe changing the tiebreakers and also expanding the playoff is probably where this is going.
All right, Stephen. Well, I feel like we could talk about this playoff nonsense till the cows come home. But let's move on to our team grades for the end of the regular season for each and every SEC team. And let's start. I'm going to leave Bama and Georgia to the end because we're going to talk plenty of them with the SEC title game. Let's go in the other order of teams in the SEC standings, and I'm going straight to Ole Miss, Stephen. 11-1, 7-1 in the Southeastern Conference. Only loss on the road at Georgia by 8 points, and I don't even care about their selfish coach. That's not what I'm grading them. I'm grading the team and how they perform this year. What's your thoughts? What grade would you give Ole Miss?
Mike, I gave Ole Miss an A, and I seriously considered an A+. I find it fascinating, the scenario that you and I talked about in the preseason, which was everybody counted this team out because they lost all those key pieces and they kind of underachieved last year by not getting to the playoff. Well, the year after the year, it actually worked out for Ole Miss. I love the road wins at Oklahoma, Mississippi State. They beat Tulane. They beat LSU at home. Like you said, the only loss to Georgia, the in-season quarterback change. So a ton of credit here to Ole Miss. I got them at A. I could easily go A+, honestly.
You harsh grader, you, Stephen. Give me an A+ for them Ole Miss Rebels. They did what they couldn't do last year, make the playoff. They didn't have any of those letdown performances, even though early, I mean, Kentucky was ugly, right? Austin Simmons, all the hype kind of went out the window pretty quickly. And to your point, they switched quarterbacks, and not only was it a seamless transition, they got even better. I thought at Arkansas was a game that they could have easily lost, but point being, they just kept getting better and better and better. Never had that letdown performance despite the distractions, marching their way to the college football playoff. I think this is the number one team that I was dead wrong about the most in the preseason. I thought this was an 8-4 type team, and they very nearly went 12-0. So I think they knocked it out of the park. I think Ole Miss deserves an A+.
This might be the only time I'm like considered a harsh grader, because normally I'm pretty kind. I think A+ is probably more appropriate, Mike. I mean, exceeding preseason expectations, overcoming the noise at the end of the year too, with Kiffin and all the drama and going on the road and beating Mississippi State. So I'm probably underselling them a little bit of a point here. So I will issue a grade correction and give them an A+. My apologies.
No, I mean, you don't have to agree with me, Stephen. So let's go A&M, Stephen. Another 11-1 team, 7-1 in the conference. Yes, it was a disappointing close to the season. Hell, I think any Aggie, if they were being honest, Stephen, they would have said, let's swap that loss for literally anybody. LSU, Notre Dame. We want the win over Texas, but that should not deflate what Coach Elko and company are building. They are also, of course, on to the the college football playoff. What's the grade for A&M in your mind?
All right, Mike, A+. We're going to give the Aggies an A+ here. I did consider giving them just an A because of the way last Friday played out and just missing out on the SEC championship. But at the same time, it's hard to knock this team. I mean, preseason expectations, I know there were some that predicted Texas A&M to go to the playoff, and I know you want to beat your rival and get to the conference championship game. But what was the thought coming into the year? This team can't get past 8-4. Well, I think if you were kind of paying attention behind the scenes, I think there was a lot of good things happening with Mike Elko, building that culture. We saw it in our coach scouting in the preseason magazine, and also what they were doing on the roster front, going out and finding the portal additions. They'll have to get a new offensive coordinator. Now it looks like Colin Klein's going to be the head coach at Kansas State. But Elko's pushed the right button so far. The culture change and the on-field improvement that we saw. Hard to find a ton of flaws. Feels like the program is on really stable footing. They're on the right track, and that's why I gave them an A+.
Hey, shout out Miho for the donation, Stephen. Ole Miss deserves an A+, especially because they did not lose focus with all the outside noise. Howdy, taddy. We appreciate you, Miho. But hey, once again, Stephen, I'm going to disagree with you.
Oh,
I'm going to disagree with you. I get it. A&M, hell of a job. Did everything, nearly everything in front of you. I'm going to give it an A. Just because it was Texas, just because it was a loss there. I don't hate the A+. You could easily say that, given you're right. But I had this team as now this one I did get, but I didn't think they'd be 11-1 certainly. But
yeah.
I did have them as a preseason playoff team. I thought they'd go 10-2. So I'm giving them an A. It's just, man, bitter rival. I know it was on the road, but that was just a little bit deflating, and I hope that doesn't cause any speed bump in terms of momentum, because after that South Carolina win, I thought this was the team of destiny, and they may still very well. They could just be the next Ohio State, that lost a tough one to close, and people mocked them and all this, that, and the other. They're overrated, but then they went on to win it all, and no one cared. So that could very well happen for Texas A&M. I'm not really knocking them for much, but losing to in-state, maybe your best season, not best season ever, because they've gone undefeated before, but the best season I can recall in the Southeastern Conference. It's tough to give you an A+ if you lose to your arch rival in the finale there. When you had an opportunity to go to the SEC championship for the first time, it was right there in front of them. They just fell just short. So I'm going to give them an A.
Don't you think that the loss to Texas could provide some good motivation for the playoff too? And also, I think not only that, I think it's easy to for maybe some of the outside to say, well, it's just the same old program. They're going to fall short. But also think about where they've come under Mike Elko. And that tells me this is probably a different team as we go into the playoff. Like that motivation and sort of like they're not 8-4, they got over the hump. It feels different, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. And, we can talk about them next because I'm literally just going down the standings here. But maybe, just maybe, Stephen, maybe I've been dead wrong about Texas and their home field advantage. So, I mean, it seemed pretty daunting there on Friday evening when A&M rolled into town. So let's do Stevens, Texas Longhorns preseason #1. Arch go win 2 Heisman trophies. We go 9-3, 6-2 in the Southeastern Conference. What's the grade for Texas?
All right, Mike, tell me if I'm being too kind. I'm giving them a B minus. Sorry, B minus for Texas. I almost went with C+, but the win over Texas A&M gave them a bump here. They've played Ohio State the closest of any team in the country, and right now it looks like Ohio State is the best team in the country. The biggest knock on this resume has got to be, number one, they just underachieved. Too much talent. And from what they've done the last few years, getting to the college football playoff and reaching a semifinal, to be number one, to underachieve at 9-3, to have that road loss against Florida. But they also have some, wins, the Oklahoma win, the Vanderbilt win, the A&M. It kind of felt like offensively, maybe they figured out what they did best too late in the season. I still don't understand why they've had such a hard time running the ball. The offensive line didn't develop. That falls very much on the coaching staff. So some areas of disappointment, but the big wins and win over Texas A&M bumped them to a B minus. So Mike, feel free to tear me apart.
Oh, and shall I ever do that? Steven, come on, preseason #1 didn't even make a playoff. Where's this Heisman Trophy I was promised from the king that was promised here? It ain't happening, Steven.
He just ran out of time, Mike. If he had 3 more games.
Yeah. Then we'd all have a Merry Christmas is what it is, Steven. But give me C- for Texas Longhorns. Yeah, I think your best win probably, again, 2 good ones here. Arguably 3 by beating Vanderbilt, but I don't think any Texas fan respected that. You got to beat Vanderbilt every single time, especially at home. I don't care how good Vanderbilt is. If they would have lost that one, they may have run Sarkisian out of town. But the Oklahoma one, that was a significant one, and of course Texas A&M. So you beat those teams, but the rest, I mean, I'm not impressed by a damn one of these. Stephen, Kentucky was awful. Mississippi State, great, you came back against arguably the worst team in the conference. I think Kentucky's the worst, but Mississippi State's not far off, and the other one's Arkansas. So these are your wins here. Good job, I guess. You shat the bed in the swamp. You're making excuses for we're not going to play tough games anymore. I ain't buying it. I mean, I thought everything was bigger in Texas. I didn't realize the excuses were the biggest. So, no, C-. This not making the playoff is inexcusable given this schedule.
So what you're telling me is I'm too nice of a grader. I need to be harsher the rest of the way.
I think you had those burnt orange sunglasses when you gave out this grade.
Might have had my hat, my burnt orange sunglasses, my Arch Manning shirt on. Yeah, Mike, you're probably a little bit more accurate on your grade here. I was trying to give them, and maybe I'm just giving them too much credit for the ranked wins. Like if you're beating Oklahoma, you're beating A&M, you're beating your rivals, you're having the top, 15-ish type wins. And the Ohio State game too. First game of the season, they went and challenged, and of course they're the team that's played Ohio State the best. But it did feel like from a personnel and coaching that this was not one of Sarkisian's better jobs at managing the talent and developing the roster. So I think that's what I was most disappointed in, because I expected some of that young talent to develop faster as we came into the season. And one of the reasons why I thought they'd get back to the playoff.
And let me ask it this way too, Stephen, and maybe this isn't fair because teams are supposed to be better by the end of the year if you're doing it right. But if Texas played the way they played against A&M, if they played that way in all 12 games, up to that standard, what do you think their record would have been this year?
Mike, I think it certainly would have been 10-2. I think they would have beaten Florida. Also,
Right.
I don't think they would have beaten Georgia, but I think it would have been a much closer game, which gets at the whole playoff scenario of, the Ohio State game is, and the more that I think about this, I think the Ohio State game is actually helping them in the rankings. I think they're clearly being hurt by the loss to Florida. Now, I think we can have a nuanced conversation about how teams have changed since October, and one of those is Florida. They were a much better team in October, not by much, but there's a little bit of nuance in some of these games. But I think the Ohio State game, there's no shame in losing 14-7. If they lost 20-17 to Georgia and they beat Florida, we're probably talking about 10-2, and they are probably in the playoff at this point. Don't you think that's fair?
Yeah, and I was going to say 11. I think they would have went 11-1 if they were playing as well as they did against A&M. So again, it's a credit for Sark and company to get to that level for such a critical game. But it's on the other hand, it's where was that all season? And you had the talent, and now all we're getting is excuses here.
Especially when you need overtime to beat Kentucky. And certainly the Mississippi State game. I mean, I think that's what's holding Texas back, like in this playoff discussion. Had they been dominant outside and you had the big wins and you only lost to Ohio State and Georgia, I think they're in. I don't think we're even having this discussion. We're probably talking about Texas bumping Notre Dame, frankly.
El Taco's mad. Shane Mike's the biggest Texas hater out there. Texas sets its expectations, not idiots like you. Don't blame them when they don't achieve them. Yeah, they're spending $50 million on their roster to go 9-3 and miss the playoffs. Good job, Taco Band. Yeah, what a load of shit that is. I mean, if you were preseason number one, and Sark said, "Well, according to who? According to who?" I mean, isn't that your job? You went to 2 semifinals in a row, and now seemingly you got the best roster to win it all. I mean, Steven, correct me if I'm wrong. They all said Quinn Ewers, he got to go. We've upgraded at quarterback, and now the expectation is 9-3. Get the hell out of here.
So first, Mike, I should say, and I hope some of the cousins have picked up on this. I just kind of lean into all the Arch Manning fun because I did have him as my preseason Heisman winner. So we've been having some fun with that all season. I appreciate everybody giving me a hard time on that one. But you're right. And Mike, the expectations aren't outside of anything. Like when you go to the playoff and you get to the doorstep of playing for the national championship 2 years in a row, and you have, I think Arch is going to end up being better than Ewers, and the talent, top five class over and over again. They have like this. The expectation's got to be college football playoff, right? I mean, at the bare minimum, they should be in the playoff and not sitting here at 9-3 with a bad loss to Florida and needing overtime to beat freaking Kentucky this year.
Yep. All right. How about them Oklahoma Sooners, Steven? 10-2, 6-2 in the conference, and I believe they have 5 ranked wins. I think, at one point, I don't know if that's still the statistic, but that was the only team in, I think, the nation that had 5 ranked wins. What's the grade for the Oklahoma Sooners?
Mike, I am going A+, because this team in the preseason, there was plenty of doubt about the direction. There was plenty of doubt looking at the schedule, wondering what the offense would be, and they overcame all of that. The 2 losses, obviously Texas and Ole Miss, no shame in that. Ole Miss is a playoff team. I know the Texas game hurts because it's a rival. Oklahoma probably wishes that game was a lot closer, but they got to the playoff in a year where this was an important year. It felt like for the direction. Venable's defense was awesome. Still would like to see some growth offensively, but certainly to go on the road and beat Alabama, to beat Missouri, to overcome some offensive issues down the stretch. I think Venables and his program answered a lot of questions this year. So in the playoff, A+ for me.
Yeah, I could see that. But they lost to Texas, Steve. I can't give you an A+. Now, again, the quarterback got banged up. So, again, we can have excuses for every game. But I'll give them a solid A. I mean, I think this is a hell of a job. Clearly, defense, I think, is the best in the country probably. And the offense, yikes, not so much. But, hey, they're making the plays when they have to. And again, it's a credit to the overall operation that they went 10-2. And the same thing we've been saying for 2 years, Stephen, uh, about Florida and the schedule and just how daunting, and they just can't overcome it. Everybody, literally everybody, even some Sooners were out there saying, man, this is unfair. Look at Texas' schedule. Look at our schedule. The SEC's corrupt. Should have stayed in the Big 12. Yet they navigated it. And I would say, you could make the argument the schedule has turned out to be even more daunting than perceived. The way Michigan has played. Tennessee was right there. Had Tennessee beaten them, maybe Tennessee's the one in the playoff. So, the hell of a job by Brent Venables and company. I give him a solid A, but you just can't get pants by old Texas and get an A+ by me.
Yeah, I'm kind of sensing a theme in your grades that you're definitely knocking some of these teams or upgrading them because of the rivalry games, and I can't really disagree with that. I think my grade of an A+ is kind of when I think about this team in the offseason, all the questions, and then just to overcome all those things, and giving Venables a lot of credit that while the offense has been not quite there, it does feel like from a direction standpoint with Arbuckle and what they've been able to do and freshmen and transfer, like I see the direction of it just hasn't come together yet. And so part of Venables is being that CEO, being that head coach, and getting this program to the next step. And they did that. So I get the loss to Texas and kind of how damaging it is, but I just think in the big picture, they answered a ton of questions this year. And to get to the playoff with that schedule, that's a pretty big accomplishment considering what all the preseason chatter was.
All right, how about Vanderbilt Commodores? Stephen, 10-2, 6-2 in the SEC. Only losses were at Bama and at Texas. And Diego Pavia should be a Heisman finalist. He may very well win the award. What's the grade for the Vanderbilt Commodores?
Mike, let's see if we agree on this one. A+. Best season in school history. You just got done destroying Tennessee and Knoxville, and you were on the doorstep of potentially making the college football playoff. Clark Lee signed an extension. Diego Pavia, like you said, Mike, a Heisman finalist. I think he should win the award. Everything went in Vanderbilt's way this year, exception of those losses to Alabama and Texas, which is going to keep him out of the playoff. But preseason win total was like, 4.5, 5.5, and they're sitting here at 10 wins and just in the doorstep of making the playoff. I think that's an A+ season for me.
Yeah, I think it's an easy one. We'll finally agree on one, Stephen. Beating the rivals, that was critical here for this one. But going to Neyland, you putting that final dagger in Tennessee, that had to have been sweet if you are a Vanderbilt Commodore. And, again, I'm not factoring in recruiting, but, just landing a 5-star quarterback, that was awesome. But you got to remember, Stephen, I'm trying to think of, let me look it up so I can get it accurately. But going to South Carolina, I keep harping on that, how, we just view these teams in the lens of who they are now at the end of the season. Carolina had beaten Vanderbilt 16 in a row. Yeah. You went to their house. They were top 10 at the time, absolutely obliterated them. And that was the start of something special for the Commodores. LSU was a huge win. Missouri, there's no love lost there between those programs. Yeah, just all around, they have completely turned the corner. This was the laughingstock, not only of the SEC, but arguably the country, especially when they had that female kicker out there. I mean, they were just literally could not get any lower in college football at the major level than the Vanderbilt Commodores. And here they are knocking at the door. Looks like, unfortunately, they're going to get left out of the playoff. I don't think they should, but I think they will get left out. But, I mean, what a heck of a job by Clark Lee and everybody.
Yeah, 100%, Mike. I mean, just think back a couple of years ago after they had that winless season in the SEC, and there was plenty of doubts about, okay, Clark Lee was probably one of the coaches that would have thrived at 4-year recruiting, developing, and then by year 3 and year 4, you've really got something. And after that season, they changed course. Went in and got Tim Beck. You got Jerry Kill. You got Diego Pavia. And they've completely changed the program culture, completely changed the expectation. Now, just like you said, bringing in a 5-star. I mean, Vanderbilt's not going anywhere. Like the last couple of years has really changed this program and gone from, okay, maybe they can have a good season every now and then, but now it feels like this program has actually had a taste of success, and they're serious about investing and growing, which is a great sign for Vanderbilt and also the rest of the SEC, and not having just a team that's penciled in at 16 every year. So just kudos to everybody at Vanderbilt for pushing this program along, and all the success this year. Will fall short of making the playoff, but also a lot to be proud of too.
Right. And speaking of being proud, Stephen, I would be proud of any of the cousins that go over to ridge.com/SEC and save 10% on their order of a Ridge wallet. They got the Ridge 2.0. I got mine right here. See this handy dandy. They like metal burned it. It was pretty cool. But again, ridge.com/SEC to get 10% off the Ridge Wallet 2.0. And they've got deals up to 47% this week only for cyber sales going on. They also got sweet little keychains. They sent me over this one. They sent Shane over one. We sent Steven one over. So we're all ridged up over here. But help yourself this Christmas season. Get you a Ridge wallet and get 10% off with that promo code SEC over at ridge.com, or just type in ridge.com/SEC and it'll get automatically applied to your order. You can't beat it, Steven. If I had to give a grade to Ridge, you better believe it'd be an A+. You know what?
A+, Mike. It works for guys like me and you. Also works good for those fired head coaches, maybe trying to stuff the buyouts. Also works great for a gift, man. You got somebody special you need to help out. Give them a gift this Christmas, right?
No doubt.
Ridge, throw in the promo code.
I might send one to Hugh to just kind of an olive branch over here so he can stuff all his excuses in his Ridge. You know what?
He's got all that buyout money, but he's got enough excuses to stuff it with. Yeah.
No doubt. Well, there's a link in the description, so go check them out. Ridge.com/SEC. Ooh, I'm going to need a Ridge to talk about Tennessee, and they're 8-4, Stephen. What grade do you give them Vols going 8-4, losing to virtually every marquee opponent, but 4-4 in conference play? What's the grade for Tennessee?
Mike, I struggled with this one. I think we might disagree. I think I'm going to be too positive. So I'm playing to Cousin Shane here. I want to make sure I stay on Cousin Shane's good side. I'm going to say B-, and here's why. I know 8-4, not quite to the standard a year after making the playoff. Plenty of questions about defense, especially after that Vanderbilt game. But given where this team was in spring practice after losing Nico, to bring in Joey Aguilar, who had played at App State and was at UCLA, for the offense to be that prolific, you also lost two of your better defenders for a significant period of time, and McCoy didn't even play this year. So I am grading a little bit on a curve for the circumstances here. Now, 4-4 in the SEC, not quite to the standard. They finished 9-3. I think that probably would have been, maybe even exceeding expectations given what's happened this year. So I graded on a curve. I'm at B-. You think that's fair?
Stephen, do I ever tell you what a smart man you are? Because I think you absolutely nailed this one. Give me a B- as well for Tennessee. I didn't think that this was going to be that good of a team. I certainly didn't think they were going to be a playoff team. Yet I think we all kind of got roped in by the Georgia game and how competitive they looked. And really they were whooping Georgia there for a minute and should have won that game. But again, as I saw more and more of Oklahoma, there's a reason. Hell, I picked them to lose to Oklahoma. I picked them to lose to Vanderbilt and Georgia and Bama. So I had all those pegged, but I'll give them an upgrade because the one game I did get wrong, credit to them, I picked them to lose to Florida because that's all they do is lose to Florida in the swamp, regardless of the opponents. And they won that one handedly. It was a 20-point margin, could have been about 50-point if Low T Heupel decided to, play a little bit more aggressive in the second half. But they didn't even need it. And again, if we go back to the preseason, I didn't really think they were going to lose to Syracuse, but it wouldn't have stunned me either, given the losses of Tennessee. So, to go from not that they were ever truly close to making the playoff, but hey, a field goal there. Maybe not having a turnover there against Oklahoma, and this would have been a playoff team. So, close but no cigar. But this to me was always a rebuilding year. This is kind of like what I thought Ole Miss would be, but of course Ole Miss succeeded, whereas Tennessee, I think they just kind of they fell right where I expected them to.
I think maybe just in the most big picture way here, Tennessee's 4 losses all came to either playoff teams or playoff like missed teams, like just missed, like in Vanderbilt's case. And also, Mike, I mean, a handful of plays go differently. Tennessee beats Georgia and Oklahoma, and we're all sitting here going, man, in a rebuilding year, Heupel got this team to 10-2, and they're back in the playoff. I mean, even before the Nico thing, I didn't think Tennessee was going to make the playoff. And so the fact that they were in the conversation this year, and had they beat Vanderbilt, they would have been in the top 15. Given all the circumstances, it's not bad. Now, I know that Tennessee fans want to make the playoff, and I hear you and I get it, but it's not all that bad considering the circumstances this year and who you lost to. So the question will be in 2026 and kind of where this team goes from here. And the off season, I think, is going to be really important for Heupel here.
Mm-hmm. And shout out one of our favorites, Steven Cousin Rick. We appreciate you, buddy.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. He says Vandy, Bama, Georgia, 8+. Ole Miss, Texas, Texas A&M, A. Rest C for the entertaining year and surviving the SEC. Happy and blessed holidays to all the cousins. Enjoy my Ridge wallet. Most importantly, beat the hell out of next gig 'em. Thank you, Rick.
Man, Cousin Rick coming through. Hope you have a great holidays too. And I think he's probably, I don't know, is he rooting for a Notre Dame rematch or maybe getting the ACC champ to come into College Station?
I think they want ACC champ to come in there and get boat raced at Kyle Field, if I had to guess.
I think if A&M is playing Virginia or Duke, they're probably at least a 2-touchdown favorite. That'd be a much more favorite. I would say this, Mike, I know you might hang up on me. I think Notre Dame might be one of the top 5 teams in the field on a neutral field. I would not want to play them if I'm Texas A&M.
I give you an F for that one, Steven.
I've had a lot of bad takes this year, Mike, so that might be up there.
And Eric says Texas did not spend $50 million. A dime over 20, maybe. But 50 first, you said 25 million in the beginning of the season. Well, here's the deal. So a lot of these universities are able to front load. So they have NIL, with the revenue sharing that's around 18 million. And then allegedly Texas spent around 20 on top of that. So I'm not a math guy, Steven, but 20 plus 18 is roughly 50 million. So that's what we blew in Austin to not make the playoff.
I was going to say, Mike, I think you nailed it there in that there's the rev share component and then there's the NIL above that. And I think I think those two factors are sometimes in the reporting, it's a little confusing, but when you add those two up, you're probably looking, to be honest with you, like $30-40 million is probably like the annual going rate for rosters, counting the rev share that all these teams go for right now.
Mm-hmm. A lot of money to spend to lose to Florida. I wouldn't know about that, though. How about, who else wouldn't know about that, Steven? LSU. What is the grade for LSU? We got Brian Kelly fired. Got Lane Kiffin. We're not factoring in Landon Lane Kiffin, but 7-5 overall, 3-5 in the conference. And buddy, aside from Florida, we didn't really win a significant conference game. And I guess you could count Clemson as a significant win just because they can't. Could you imagine, Steven, all the all-season discussion? We can't win an opener. They finally won it, and yet it was the worst season yet under Brian Kelly. What's the grade for LSU?
Mike, I might be too harsh, but I gave him a D because I think this team had playoff aspirations in the preseason, and rightfully so. You brought back Garrett Nussmeier. You brought in several portal additions. The defense, for all the offensive troubles, was good this year. But you're right. When you look at the wins this season, great win over Clemson to start the year. I thought this is going to be different. It's a different LSU team. They get the opener win. The win over Florida was nice. But after that, I mean, just so many offensive issues. There was the 1-point win over Arkansas. There was kind of a close call against Western Kentucky when things got interesting late. So overall, I kind of just gave him a D basically because it was just so disappointing this season. Is that too harsh?
No, not at all. And I might even go an F, Steven.
Yeah.
I mean, this was another one. Now, I didn't think they'd ever be a playoff team. So maybe that is. Would you say D or would you say D minus?
I said D.
Okay, I'll go D minus then, just to go slightly more critical of you. Just the fact that they fired this coach they brought in here to win a national championship. But yeah, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, the prince that was promised, and I mean, he didn't even get to finish out the year. It was so devastating. We never learned to run the football under Brian Kelly. We certainly seems like we've regressed. We got further and further away from it as the Brian Kelly era went on. I think they missed on most of the guys they added via the portal. I know Pyburn was good. Some of the defensive backs were good. That's about it that I can think of. And this is number one portal class. So yeah, sometimes you bring in these free agents and sometimes they're not ready for the task at hand. And I think that was clearly the case here at LSU. So give me a D minus. This was just an awful year, but should turn around in a hurry here with Lane Kiffin.
I was going to say that's the biggest bright spot in all this is that this season was not good. It's either a D or an F on the grade, but at the same time, they got Lane Kiffin, and it's about to get a lot better in 2026 and beyond. So out of a bad season, something good came out of it, I guess.
And how quickly we go to some of the dregs. Oh, wait, shoot. I totally forgot Missouri here.
Yeah.
Overlooked Missouri there. So shout out Missouri. Sorry about that. But I mean, 8-4, we can, it's easy to forget you here with playoff aspirations, the offseason narrative, 6 straight home games. If we can capture those, we can finally make the playoff, but we obviously know fell short. 8-4 overall, 4-4 in conference. What's the grade for Mizzou?
Mike, I struggled with this one too, because 8-4 is not bad, but also it's kind like they got the big win over Kansas, but they also had all these opportunities against Alabama, against Texas A&M at home. There was the close game against Vanderbilt, and they fell short in all of those. So it felt like in all the biggest games outside of Kansas, this team fell short. So I went with C+, almost because it just felt kind of average. Like they didn't knock off an upset that could have got them into playoff discussion. I do like what they've done on the roster front. Also, kind of giving them a little bit of a curve here because Prabula and Sam Horn getting hurt, having to put Zollers in. They were kind of changing quarterbacks a couple times. So I gave them a little bit of a break for that. Maybe it's too harsh, but there's just no big win outside of Kansas on there. Is that fair?
No, 100%. And this is kind of where I thought they would be, but even in some of the losses were pretty disappointing. A&M especially. Oklahoma was rough. Vanderbilt, very rough. So I'm going to go C for Missouri. And this is sort of what I thought, but I thought with this schedule, 9-3 was certainly attainable. I didn't really think they'd be a playoff contender. Now, when they got to 5-0, there was hope. There was optimism. I thought they would get there. And, through that lens, to go 5-0, which a lot of it probably was schedule-based, but to finish losing so many games, 3-4 down the stretch. Now, I should give them extra credit, Stephen. They didn't put the final dagger in Hugh Freeze, but they placed him over the dagger that would get him soon after. So I give a little extra credit for that. But now, C year, this defense was playoff caliber, and the offense, aside from Ahmad Hardy, was just a disaster.
Kind of, isn't it? Missouri's offense has been kind of strange. Like at times it feels like under Kirby Moore and Drinkowitz that they really have a chance to be one of the better groups in the SEC. Then at times it's kind of like head scratching a little bit. But I love, and offensively, like going out and getting Kevin Coleman, going out and getting Hardy. Like they've done a good job of portal identification. Also, the offensive line was a question coming into the year. Felt like that group ended up being okay for the most part. So solid, I guess. But there's also nothing that kind of makes me go, okay, like A or B is the deserving grade. It feels like a very kind of middle of the pack C kind of season here.
Right.
Missed opportunities, I should say. Yeah.
I think the defense was so good that it got overshadowed by largely disappointing offense and at times just a truly horrific special teams that not their fault their kicker got hurt in the opener, but that You can't overcome that if you're not in the elite team. And hell, I don't even know if an elite team could truly overcome that. You know what?
It's hard to keep one. I mean, it's like quarterbacks, right? It's like hard to keep one kicker around. If you got two good ones, one's going to go start somewhere else. So yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, they kind of had some tough circumstances with the injuries, quarterbacks and kickers this year.
Well, speaking of tough season, how about Kentucky, Stephen? 5-7, 2-6 in the conference. Ooh, buddy, and we got our all-time winningest coach fired as a result. What's the grade for the Kentucky Wildcats?
Mike, if you would have asked me in October, I would have said F. But I'll give them. Let's give Kentucky a little bit of credit here. I'm going to go D+ because they did find a way to get a couple SEC wins. They beat Auburn. They beat Florida, Tennessee Tech. I thought maybe I could go a little bit higher, but then I thought about the last two games, and they just got completely demolished against Vanderbilt and then a shorthanded Louisville team. So I dropped them down to D+, kind of a grade that probably would have changed a couple times during the season. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I thought this was going to be an awful team, and it kind of laid out that way. But at least they beat Florida. At least they put the final dagger in Hugh Freeze. So, yeah, D, anywhere in the D+, D-. What's the difference? You know what I mean? So right there, double D, Mark Stoops. We will miss you the longest. And I'm hoping that, I'm hoping Will Stein, who they're about to introduce here in about 2 hours, I hope he can bring some energy and some enthusiasm, some innovation to this program that desperately needs it. I'm not trying to throw dirt on Mark Stoops' grave because he did do a good job, but he was not suited for this era. I think that is kind of the kindest way I could put it.
Yeah, and I think there is a point with Stoops and some of these other coaches where it does get stale. Like see James Franklin at Penn State. It's like even if you've had success, there comes a point to where in this era, standards change, roster management changes. Some coaches just aren't good at it. And also, I think for as good as at times as Stoops and also Brad White has been on defense, like offense has lagged the inability to kind of find an answer at quarterback. Cutter Boley looks like he might be that this year, but this team this year, I think, was in the preseason pick to finish probably at the bottom by most people. The fact they kind of dug out of that maybe gave me a little bit of hope they could get to 6-6 with that game over Louisville. But the fact they just got crushed. And so even though Stoops is the winningest coach in program history, a lot of success there, it was just time for change. And I think if you had to make a list of maybe the top 5 like rising star assistants in college football right now, I think Will Stein would be up there. I think he might be number 1 or number 2. So I think this is a really good hire for Kentucky and kind of change the direction that'll suit them well.
All right, how about them Florida Gators, Stephen? 4-8, 2-6 in the conference. Got Billy Napier fired. What's the grade for the Gators?
Mike, I am going with D-. Did give them some credit for beating Florida State and, of course, beating Texas. But at the same time, this was a team that had aspirations of potentially making the playoff. Lagway's injury, I think, played a large part in kind of the failure of this team. But Napier's an offensive coach, and the offense was abysmal from the start. It really never got better. Dallas Wilson, Jaden Baugh, really promising. Yes, they beat Texas. Yes, they beat Florida State. But, man, to be sitting here missing a bowl game, it just seems like I could even go an F here. But I went with D- because of the Texas and Florida State games.
Well, you nice grader, you, Stephen. F, this is an easy F. I talked to Ole Miss was the team I was most wrong about in a good way. This is the team I was most wrong about in a bad way. The wheels came off. I'm surprised they didn't fire Napier immediately after the South Florida loss. Writing was on the wall. You had everything in front of you. Yes, DJ Lagway, we can make it this, that, and the other excuse. Well, you should have brought in a capable backup then because we knew this guy gets injured every damn year. So give me a solid F for Florida. Get the hell out of here. And I hope John Summerall can keep this thing together and because he should have a pretty good roster. And I think they'll be much improved.
Do you like the Brad White hire for Florida?
I do. Now,
Yeah,
I thought he had kind of lost his touch a little bit, but Kentucky's been much better this year, in particularly on the defensive side of the football. So given a higher level of athlete to work with, I think he will once again showcase himself as, for a while there, I thought he was the best defensive coordinator in the SEC. I think he'll be in the top half once again.
I think somebody that typically shines like Brad White does when maybe not working with like A+ talent at Kentucky, to now go to a place like Florida, where he's going to be working with probably more talented players, and his defenses can get even better. I still think the biggest question I have for Summerall is going to be that offensive coordinator hire. Joe Craddock's been fine at Tulane. I think he's going to have to probably hire a little bit above that. So that's the most critical piece to his tenure at Florida. I think is going to be who is OC, because you see, Mike, you remember when Will Muschamp took the job at Florida, like what he went through Charlie Weiss, Brent Pease, Kurt Roper. Like he cycled through OCs, and defensive coordinators tend to have trouble hiring the right one. If he hits the right one, I think they got a chance to be a lot better in a hurry.
Hey, shout out Junior. Give us $5, Stephen. Billy Napier, the best defensive coordinator available, really knows how to shut down an offense. Well said, Junior.
I think Napier's name popped up in the mix for the Tulane job.
Well,
Blake Baker too. Yeah.
All right. How about Auburn, Stephen? 5-7 overall, 1-7 in conference play. Beat Baylor. That's about the highlight of the season, and it came in week 1.
Mike, maybe I should let you go first on this one. I might be too kind. I'm going to go with a D-. I almost went with an F here. The only reason why I didn't, and maybe this is a shame on me for taking this into account, they got rid of Hugh Freeze. So I'm trying to play to the judge here and Mike and giving them a bump, because otherwise, I mean, the only thing you could really argue is a lot of close losses. Not to sound like Jimbo Fisher, not to sound like Hugh Freeze, but Missouri, Kentucky, Alabama, they were at least on the doorstep when they changed, got rid of Hugh Freeze. The offense got a little bit better. Defense was pretty good, despite all of the offensive ineptitude there. So I gave him a D- because they got rid of Hugh Freeze.
I'm going to give him an A+ because they got rid of Hugh Freeze's ass. But while he was the coach, F-. I mean, come on, Stephen. This was a joke. The only thing they had this year was defense. Shout out DJ Durkin. I'm going to credit him. I'm not going to credit Hugh for any of it. This is about what I thought. I mean, I thought they'd even make a bowl game. I thought there's no way he could screw it up this bad with this roster. At least they'll make a bowl. Couldn't even do that. So give me an F-, whatever. I don't even know if that's a real grade or not. But and then after firing him, probably a solid B+ if I had to be honest. But overall, I'm going to give it an F.
I can't disagree with you. They were definitely better once they got rid of Hugh Freeze, though, because they almost beat Vanderbilt. They almost beat Alabama. We kind of joke about it, but didn't Hugh in the preseason say that the goal was to get to a bowl game this year?
He did.
I mean, 6-6 is not a standard at Auburn. Like that's just not. You can aim higher at Auburn than just making the Birmingham Bowl, right?
He had to correct it at media day and say, we're playoff. That's our goal. And now he just went on David Pollock podcast and said, everybody's obsessed with the playoff. You don't get to playoff, you're out. Well, you idiot. You said it at media day, so you can't blame everybody else for putting that on you. But I think that's the last time I'm going to mention that loser. All right.
He ran out of excuses, Mike, right?
How about Mississippi State, Stephen? 5-7 overall, 1-7 in the conference. Started 4-0. Rough finish to the season, but at least they got that elusive conference win.
Yeah, I kind of was kind, I guess, to Mississippi State in my grading. I give them a B. And I know you may look at 5-7 and say they don't deserve a B, but I look at the improvement from year 1 to year 2 under Jeff Lebby, and the defense got a little bit better, and they made considerable on-field progress, way more competitive. They easily could have beat Florida if they didn't throw an interception. They could have beat Texas in overtime. They got that SEC win. They were way more competitive, and honestly, they were way better than I anticipated. I thought they would probably be under the 5-win mark this year, so credit to Jeff Lebby for getting this program on the doorstep of a bowl game. Now it's time to take the next step next year and do so. But I thought we wanted to see on-field progress, and we did this year. So I gave him a B.
Yeah, I guess that's all right, Stephen. I'll give him a C because, there was games there that could have been had. Florida, particular. The Tennessee at moments that looked winnable. How they blew that Texas game, I'll never know. So yeah, they did take a big step forward, but I'm blaming the coaching for not getting us there. Defense did look worlds better for the first couple of maybe the first half of the season. Then they kind of started to cave as well. Man, I'm just we got to stop hiring our buddies, go hire some good coaches. If we do that, maybe we're cooking here. But I don't know. I think Jeff Lebby is nothing more than a really good quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, and nothing I saw from this season has kind of backed me off that.
I think they got a good shot to go to a bowl game next year if they continue to make strides. But you're right. I think it's fair to wonder, like, what's the ceiling here? If nothing else, the floor for this team got raised quite a bit this year, and I did see the improvement I wanted to see on defense and just overall roster. Now, maybe the step forward is they've had 2 seasons to build and sort of build the depth in the program, which I thought it was better this year, especially on defense. So now you've got 2 classes in, you get another portal class, and you can take that next step forward. Mike, there's also an opportunity here too for Mississippi State. Like, you think about the balance of power in the state. Ole Miss is going through all this change. If you're Mississippi State, can you kind of take advantage of some of these, transitions that Ole Miss is going through? I think there's an opportunity for Mississippi State next year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is there an opportunity for Carolina though, Stephen? Went 4-8 overall, 1-7 in the conference. Buddy, this was a top 15 preseason team, and they got exposed overall. What's the grade for the Carolina?
Mike, is F too harsh?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I had to go F. I was wrestling with D- or just a flat out F. And I tried to talk myself into a D-, but then I looked at go back and look at the results. Virginia Tech win, that was great. Virginia Tech fired its coach a few weeks later. Went over Kentucky. Kentucky might be the worst team in the SEC. They lost to Clemson. There's not, for a team that entered the season with top 15 aspirations to finish 4-8 with 1 win in conference play, a very bad offense and a very bad coordinator hire, and you could go up and down the positions. Quarterback didn't take a step forward. I don't think it's all Sellers' fault, but the offensive line, run game, receivers, defense regressed. Like, there was just regression across the board. It's hard to find a positive outside of those first couple games. So I went with F for South Carolina.
I'm giving them an F as well, Stephen. Now, call me crazy because I'm usually the fire everybody guy. But when we got this many good teams in this conference, I mean, somebody's got to lose, right?
Yeah.
And as long as the team's not outright quitting, I think it was just South Carolina this year. Now, you could easily say, well, maybe they certainly should have made a bowl game. I 100% agree with that. But Missouri was close, LSU was close, Bama was close, Texas A&M was close. Again, no one cares how close you are if you're not winning these games. But I think it's too early to just. I mean, all the things that you just pointed out to went wrong. I don't know. Somebody's got to lose, right? And they found themselves on the losing end way too many times. We can't have another year like this. Otherwise, we do got to make a change, perhaps. But I don't look at this as like. I mean, it's the same coach that won 9 games last year. I don't think he's like a complete moron or anything. I think they caught just all the bad breaks and they couldn't finish the deal.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily worried. I guess, like, when I see like the bottom fall out for a team, you do wonder kind of like direction wise. But like you said, I mean, this team was fighting. They could have easily beat Texas A&M. They could have beat Alabama. Maybe if they don't have mistake after mistake against Clemson, maybe we're talking about a different outcome in that game. So I think just on the most basic level, if you had told me in the preseason that South Carolina is not going to meet the preseason goal of being a top 25 team, I would have said at least they get to a bowl game, right? And it kind of gets at what you said was, at the bare minimum, it felt like, okay, difficult schedule, but 6-6 kind of feels like the floor for this team, just given that they've got Lenore Sellers, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But this also, Mike, I don't know if you remember this. We talked about this like when we talked about some of the best players in the SEC in the preseason. They had the very top level players, Stewart and Sellers, but there was a pretty wide gap between other. We talked about offensive line. We talked about those other positions. And I think that's the question. How do you fill in those spots for next season? So just given that the expectations were high, you've got a quarterback in Sellers. The bowl game at least should have been on the table, even with the tough schedule. It's hard to find a positive here other than saying they fought hard in those games and they were close at least.
Right. And can you find any positives with Arkansas? 2-10, 0-8 in the Southeastern Conference. Started out 2-0, Stephen. And optimism reigns supreme. And then 10 consecutive losses. Rough. What's the grade for Arkansas?
Mike, I can't give Arkansas an F. Some people might. I'm going to give them a D- because despite everything, the coaching change, the difficult schedule, they are a handful of plays away maybe from having 1 or 2 wins in SEC play. And I know that's not a great standard, but Mike, you think about the heartbreak, the Ole Miss game, the fumble, the late turnover against Memphis. They could have stopped Mississippi State on 4th down. LSU by 1 point. They were close and they were way more competitive than 2-10 suggests. So I have to go D- because they only won 2 games, but at the same time, it feels like they were way more competitive than their record suggests.
I'll give you that, Stephen, but I'm also giving them an F. Come on, Stephen, get the heck out of here. I didn't think this was going to be a good team by any measure. I thought 4-8, 5-7 type, but 2-10. It's totally inexcusable, and I would almost rather my team get their ass kicked every week than lose close 10 times in a row. You know what I mean? It's just heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. And again, they went Bobby Petrino route, which is questionable, but they thought that was going to turn around, and it was just the same old, same old. So this is kind of the identity of this program, regardless of who the coach is. That's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge for Ryan Silverfield is to come in there and have a winning attitude and have the players kind of buy into that and turn around the culture. Because right now Arkansas is just stuck in I think they're, I don't want to say loser mentality, but just kind of like lacking confidence that they can even win these games.
Well, I think it does feel like sometimes when things start to go wrong, it's like kind of like, oh no, here we are again, and sort of like maybe like a defeatist mentality sometimes. Some of the breaks have been just very unlucky for Arkansas, but there's also like you kind of have to create your own luck in some of these circumstances too. So I do think we talked about the Silverfield hire. I know people aren't necessarily in on it, but I do think if he's given the right resources, I do think he can at least recruit the kind of high school and transfer talent that at least kind of raises the floor back, and Arkansas is competitive again, much like they were this year, and maybe go into bowl games, maybe not next year and beyond, but it's going to take some time, I think, for him to kind of win over the fan base. He's going to have a really successful offseason to get this program back on track, because it feels like the seeds of the 2-10 season kind of started with very poor defensive recruiting and talent identification there. So that's kind of his challenge going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, Steven. So let's get into our SEC championship preview and your prediction. And you can even throw out a grade too as well for these two teams, for Georgia and Alabama. I think Georgia, in my mind, gets an A. Only loss is Bama. It was at home, though, which is a little tough, but found a way to win every other game. And even though a lot of them were close, Tennessee, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida even, all close. Georgia Tech, we could throw that one in there as well. Whereas for Alabama, Stephen, I'm going to give them an A-, because this is a team I thought they would. This is about where I thought they would be. This was my preseason team to win the the SEC, but they lost to dirtbag Florida State, lost to Oklahoma, both, and why? Not that Oklahoma's bad, but favored to win in both of those. I think double-digit favorite maybe against. Certainly Florida State.
Yeah.
I can't remember Oklahoma. I don't think it was double-digit. It may have been 8 or 9, if I can't recall. But either way, probably I can't give you anything higher than an A- for you losing to those teams.
Mike, we 100% agree on Alabama. I had them as an A-, largely because of that loss to Florida State. And I love the fact that once they lost that game, it was like backs against the wall. They had to be clutch week in and week out, going on to beat Georgia on the road, beating Missouri, coming back to beat South Carolina. Like, I like the fight, and I like the fact that they were so clutch with their back against the wall. Florida State was so bad, that performance in week 1, and it's not a good Florida State team. They're sitting at home at 5-7, trying to figure out ways to buy out Mike Norvell next year. So I just think because of that, they can't get an A or A plus. So I went with A minus for Alabama as well. And for Georgia, Mike, I have them as an A. If they win on Saturday, I would give them an A plus to get revenge against their only loss this season. You know, the close games were something that you and I talked about early in the year. But at the same time, it does feel like this team has really started to kind of come into its own as we got into November. Defense seems to be finding itself. Gunnar Stockton been playing well outside of that Georgia Tech game too. So I like the direction. Georgia seems to be peaking at the right time as we go into this SEC championship game and playoffs. So if they win, I'd give them an A plus. If not, they're an A for me this season.
So looking ahead to Atlanta this weekend, Stephen, where are the keys to the game, you think, for the SEC championship? Once again, Alabama and Georgia, they've met once this year, of course, in Athens. Alabama came away a 24-21 winner. You know, it came down to a late stop on 4th down. Alabama, if I recall, was dominant in the first half, but they did not score in the second half. But who cares, because you won the football game, and Bama's beaten them, I think, 9 out of, 10 here? So Alabama's owned it, but do they own it on Saturday? What are the keys to the game here?
You know, Mike, it is funny. You just mentioned the slow start by Georgia in that game against Alabama. And like, that was a thing for this team. Like, they had to kind of like rally in the second half. You think about that game against Auburn. So I think where that ties into Saturday is, I'm wondering, okay, does Georgia get off to a faster start here? And I think that's critical because of the way this series has gone. Now, a lot of these rosters are so transactional. Series history maybe doesn't mean anything. But I'm sure Georgia's going to hear all week, Kirby's 1-7 against Alabama. Alabama won last time these two teams played earlier this year. So there's kind of a psychological edge that Alabama has going into this game. And I do wonder, you know, if you're Georgia, you just don't want to fall behind, because I think Gunnar Stockton can lead you back. But if Alabama gets up like 17-0 and they're throwing the ball well with Simpson, they're moving it, and you kind of get Georgia out of what it wants to do offensively, you know, that kind of moves the game in favor of Alabama, as simple as that may sound. So I think one of my keys to the game is, how does the first half play out? Do we see a repeat of the first game where Alabama jumps out? Or is this time different? Does Georgia just come in on Saturday, they take control, they're leading at halftime, and they are in full control of this game, and we're not worried if you're sitting there at home going, is Alabama going to do it again? Kirby's sitting, man, we're 1-7 against these guys, and we're in control, and we're going to finish the job in the second half. So I think getting off to a fast start could really benefit both sides here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I know they'll both be motivated to win, but any chance there's a little bit more motivation for Alabama? I've seen some of the players have been asked this, so they're aware of it, and they always give the coach speak. You know, we're just focused on this game, but there is a chance, perhaps, that if they lose this, they're out of the playoff. Now, I don't think that'll happen, but certainly Georgia, win or lose, they're in. Is there any way that is an advantage for Alabama, you think, in almost a do or die mindset for the Tide?
I do, because I do think, to your point, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you can play up that angle. You could say, hey, look, if we lose this game, the committee's going to put Notre Dame and maybe even BYU or Miami in over us. So our backs are against the wall. And Mike, honestly, they could look at that spread. You know, I know Georgia's only a slight favorite, but if I'm, you know, big game DeBoering here, I'm going, hey, look, we beat Georgia once this year. And if we're getting disrespected by Vegas, but if we win this game, there's one of two things that are going to happen. Number one, I think they should be in the top 4, and I think they should get a bye week. But if they don't, they're at least hosting a playoff game. So there's a lot at stake for Alabama, just given what could happen on Sunday, in, out of the field. I think they're in, but I think they could play it up. But there's also, if they win, the rewards. It's you get an off week, or at least you get a home game. There's a lot there at stake, I think, for Alabama there.
If Alabama were to win again over Georgia and Kirby Smart, what would that be? DeBoer would be 3-0, I believe, against Kirby.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not already a psychological edge, could that conceivably get even worse?
Don't you? I mean, Kirby's so good at this. Like, I don't know if I worry about this, but I do sometimes wonder, you make a mistake and you almost like correct and you almost like overcorrect. You know what I'm saying? Like, this happens. Like, so at some point you become so obsessed with trying to win this game. And Kirby's right that everybody's record against Alabama has been bad, but it is a thing. And especially when Alabama's lost the greatest coach in college football history and they're still winning in Athens. So I think for Georgia, it's almost like you don't have to course correct anything. I think if you just play your game on Saturday and not get too carried away with, we got to beat Alabama, I think I think there's a good chance that they can. I mean, obviously they're a favorite here, so they take care of business. But I do think there is a danger if you lose, it just continues to spiral and become a thing, and you try to course correct just to beat Alabama.
You said, Kurt, everybody's got a bad record against Bama. Not Brett Venables. Not Diego Pavia. You know what I mean? Like some of the people we've totally discounted, they could beat them. So I don't buy that BS from old Kirby. I get it, though. I mean, you got to say what you got to say, but
Mike Norvell's want to know against him too.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of evidence here that Alabama's not some juggernaut that can't be defeated, yet that's what they look like every time they line up against the Georgia Bulldogs. So I don't know. I mean, just my point being, I guess, after this game, if Alabama were to win, and I'm not saying they do, but if they were to win, Georgia just better hope and pray they don't catch them. They're on the other side of the bracket in the playoff and somebody else can knock them off,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting storyline when it comes to the playoff, Mike, because like we were talking earlier of how the bracket could play out. If Alabama is the 9 seed again, they're probably playing at Oklahoma in a rematch. But if they slide to the 10, we get Texas A&M and Alabama. We didn't get a chance to see that game this year. I'd like to see that one. But there could be some other shuffling in there. And so I think just from why this game matters, I think is it's going to tell us a lot about how the seeding is going to play out. Like, do we get some SEC matchups, or are we going to get some separation in those and maybe we don't get a rematch of Oklahoma, Alabama? So I do think regardless of what happens, if you're Alabama and lose and it's close, you're 9 or 10. If you win, I think you're going to be in the top 4 come Sunday and getting a bye week. So just the stakes are just really high for both teams in the SEC championship game.
If Georgia wins this game, do you think it's the best win of the season for them? Or is it still maybe Ole Miss? Is it at Tennessee? Where would it rank, do you think, for Georgia?
That's a good question. I would probably say it would be the best win, just considering the stakes. SEC championship. You get revenge for your own loss.
Texas was a good win too.
Yeah, Texas, the Ole Miss game. Yeah, I would say that's probably their best win. Don't you think so?
I do, and the reason I bring that up is just it'd be nice to have that momentum going into the college football playoff, playing your best football. I just I don't know if that really makes a huge difference, but I do think it helps mentally and to. Right now, they've already got the bye that would secure it for them. They'd probably move up even higher in the rank. I think obviously they would because one of Ohio State, Indiana has to lose, right? So I don't know. I was just thinking out loud there, but
Mike, also it's like if you win this game, you don't have to listen to 3 weeks of they can't beat Alabama, and that's why they're not in a bye week. They're probably hosting a playoff game, but the storylines be way different. And it's also. I think the bye week could really be beneficial for Georgia, given the injuries on the offensive line that they have. So do you get a chance to maybe get those guys healthy? CJ Allen, we saw him come back in Georgia Tech. I think Georgia could really benefit from the bye week, maybe quite a bit compared to some of these other teams. So that's an extra kind of chip on the table for this weekend.
Hey, let me ask you this, Stephen. If there's like one player on each offense that the other opposing defense really is needs to key in on and prevent them from having a big game. And let's take the quarterbacks off the table because that's a little bit obvious. But let's start with Alabama. What is one player on the Crimson Tide that Kirby Smart and his defense really they're really going to need to limit them to get a win in this game?
Would you say maybe Jeremy Bernard? Because Ryan Williams has just been kind of absent. Isaiah Horton, all he does is catch touchdowns. No Josh Cuevas. So maybe you take away Jeremy Bernard and you force some of those other guys to beat you.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It may be they've just been so bad running the football, but at times when they get that going, like they did in the Iron Bowl, Vanderbilt's another game that I can think of. They ran the football really well. To me, it might be a running back, Stephen, but I don't know who that would be. But just if Alabama can run, which is obviously not something they specialize in this year, it just adds another dimension. Does that make sense? Like it's almost like I think Alabama's good enough to beat Georgia being one-dimensional, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're not able to do that. Does that make sense?
It does. I think if I'm Georgia, I think you probably have to have some confidence that you can probably take away the Alabama run game. But I think you're right in the sense of if you're Alabama and you have this potent passing game, you don't necessarily need 300 rushing yards to win this game, right? You just have to, and I think about this a lot, you just have to have the threat sometimes of a run. Because if the defense just doesn't respect it at all, they're just going to be dropping guys in coverage. And they say, look, we've got 6, 7 guys and 5, and we can stop you with that. Whereas I think like if Daniel Hill, they're kind of churning out like maybe 4 yards, maybe 5 yards here and there, all of a sudden it kind of changes things. Even Ty Simpson's mobility too. We saw that a couple of times in the Iron Bowl. Obviously, you're asking about non-quarterbacks, but I think that you're right in the sense of like if Georgia just completely eliminates the run game, then I think it's going to be tough for Alabama to win. I think they've got to have at least the threat, much like they did against Auburn, even if they don't rush for 158 yards.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then let's flip it the other way, Stephen. Which Georgia weapon do Kane Womack and the Alabama defense have the most worry about in this matchup?
Mike, I think it's got to be Zachariah Branch, doesn't it? Yeah. Because I think it's just sometimes it seems like if the offense is bogged down, what's the play call on third down? The bubble to Zachariah Branch, and he makes a guy miss, and all of a sudden 5 yards turns into 20, or it turns into a touchdown. He's a game breaker and a playmaker and somebody who can change the game very quickly for Georgia. So I think Georgia's got to find ways to get him the ball in space, and he can make an impact maybe on a handoff, special teams, receiving, or whatever. But there's big playability there, and I think you always want to take that away and make them go 10, 11, 12 plays down the field. You ask them to be perfect for those drives and don't give up big plays.
Mm-hmm. And does it concern you at all, Stephen, that Georgia, both these teams are not that great at getting to the passer, but it seems like that's kind of critical, as it is for all quarterbacks, so it's kind of a little bit of a Captain Obvious statement. But getting after Ty Simpson, that seems to be paramount to slowing down Alabama. Oklahoma did it. Florida State did it. And I don't know if Georgia is built this season to get after the passer. How big of a concern, if at all, is that in this one?
It is a concern. Let me also ask you this, though. Do you think they've been better at getting to the quarterback the last couple weeks, though?
It certainly seems like they have been.
Yeah, it does. And I was kind of surprised when kind of looking over the stat sheet. Like you just watch the games and kind of the stats almost like they go in the back of your mind. And after 4 or 5 games, you look. And Georgia has had 9 sacks over the last 4 games. They have 17 for the season. So they've had over half of their production in the last 4 games. Could that be some of it offensive line? Mississippi State, Texas, like they're not that great on the offensive line. Charlotte as well. Could be some of that. Haynes King's pretty mobile. They had 1 sack against him. You know, you can kind of read what you want to in that, but it does, like the eyes test tells me that they've been getting to the quarterback more, which on Saturday, if you think, how do you stop this Alabama offense? Well, if I'm Kirby and Glenn Schumann, I'm taking my chances with this passing game, trying to win 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and we're coming after you, as opposed to tie it with the run game. If they're 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, that's tough territory for Georgia's defense. So yeah, I think they got to get to the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other keys to this matchup that we haven't hit on that's kind of, that you'll really have your eye on Saturday?
I think the trenches, to go back to something we talked about a few minutes ago, Mike, Drew Bobo getting hurt, Georgia's tackles were banged up against Georgia Tech. We'll kind of see what the injuries look like Friday or Saturday. But in the first matchup, Georgia ran for 227 yards against Alabama. So we saw the game Friday against Georgia Tech, with the injuries, kind of pressure, running game. They've got to be able to, number one, protect, but I think they've also got to be able to run the ball, because the same thing is true. I think if you're Alabama, you're okay saying, Georgia, try to win on 3rd and 9. But if Georgia gets that run game going, short third, being efficient and letting Gunnar Stockton make plays with his legs, I think that's a tough spot for Alabama to be in. Also, mention the injuries for Georgia. I mean, no Cuevas, no Jam Miller for Alabama. How do they fill in around that for the Crimson Tide too?
Mm-hmm. All right, Steven. So, moment of truth. You've been delaying as long as humanly possible, I can tell. And don't forget, cousins, Steven is tied with you on the season picks. So this could very well be the championship winning pick by Steven, or the championship losing pick. This is for the playoffs, Steven. If you don't get this wrong, you ain't going to the playoff.
No pressure, right? You said a word a minute ago that I think is critical. It's moments. Because I think about the first game and I think about Alabama won the moments. There was that late conversion that Ty Simpson had. There was the 4th down stop where Georgia tried to get it to Cash Jones. There was a turnover too. Alabama won those moments, and they played a great first half. So I think about those in the context of this game and saying, which team's going to get those 3 to 4 breaks? Because this game feels pretty close to me. I suspect we're going to get Alabama's best here. I know the offense has kind of been maybe not firing on 8 cylinders at times. I think we're going to get their best. I think we're going to get Georgia's best. I know people are tired of Georgia and Alabama, but I'm fired up. Kirby ends the curse and the streak. Give me the Dogs. 27, Alabama 24.
Oh, so a close one, huh?
Yeah, Mike, I think we are in for another close edition of Georgia and Alabama. And like I said, I know people are tired of Georgia and Alabama, but I think we're in for a heck of a game on Saturday.
What's your confidence level in that prediction out of scale of 1 to 10?
Probably like a 4.
Okay.
Yeah. A point spread that's under a field goal always makes me nervous. So yeah. I do think Georgia's the better team right now, and they will get revenge for that first loss.
And if it plays out, I know there's like other factors, so this is probably not a fair question for you. But if it plays out this way, Georgia wins in a 3, or let's just say 7 or less. Any guess on the final playoff prediction seedings for Georgia and Alabama?
If Georgia wins, I think they will be the 2 seed. The catch to that is Indiana and Ohio State a field goal game that goes down to the wire, and the committee says, okay, if Ohio State's won, Indiana's not moving. Really not a ton of difference to me in 2 or 3, because you at least avoid Ohio State. So I think I would vote Georgia 2 if they win. If Alabama wins, I'm going to guess they'll probably be the 4 seed and they get a bye week. If they lose, I think they probably slide behind Notre Dame and end up being the 10 seed.
And if Alabama wins and is 4, there's no chance Georgia's ahead of them after losing to them twice. Is there?
I don't think so. I think in that scenario, Georgia would be either 5 or 6. I think they would stay ahead of Ole Miss, who's at 6. So Oregon's 5, Georgia's 3. Personally, I wouldn't drop Georgia behind Oregon. I think they could just slide to 5. They would host probably Tulane or Texas in the first round. So not a steep fall. They're certainly there to still host a playoff game.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking for Georgia, I mean, it's a, they don't have a loser mentality over there, but it's a win-win regardless, right? You're getting a bye or you're getting a home game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ideal position to be going into an SEC. Maybe that gives them, a carefree mentality, which serves them well, perhaps.
Yeah, I think they are securely in the field. Alabama has maybe like 15% anxiety here just because they're closer to the bubble, whereas Georgia's just playing for, hey, if we win, we get the off week. We'll play in the Sugar Bowl, and then you're kind of charting a path to where it's pretty favorable for you. If you lose, I'm not saying you're playing with house money, but you would get a first round home game and it'd be favorable. So there's no downside here for Georgia if they, obviously you want to win this game, but the loss factor would only drop them probably to 5 or 6, whereas Alabama, a little closer to the bubble, a little bit more worry. I think they're in, but still I think you'd worry with a bad loss.
Can you give, last thing, Stephen, I really appreciate your time. Can you give me a worst case scenario for the SEC? Would it be Bama gets blown out, and then what would be the other? Would it be BYU winning big?
Yeah,
or just winning essentially?
Yeah, if that's a good point. If BYU wins, they are in, and they are bumping somebody out.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they probably would, but
right. I think it's Notre Dame. That's the team that would get bumped out because it makes it easy. They've had this Notre Dame Miami debate. Well, if BYU wins, Notre Dame falls out. Notre Dame, Miami are both out. They don't want to make anybody mad. But you're right. Like if Alabama gets blown out,
sorry to cut you off.
No.
Is there any way it could be Bama gets blown out, BYU gets blown out, and then they're just say, well, hell, we can't decide between Bama, Notre Dame, and Miami. Let's put Notre Dame and Miami both in there.
I could see that. I don't want to make anybody nervous. Personal opinion, that should not happen. Watching what the committee does, though, 3 losses, if they get blown out, they're right on the bubble. I could see them doing that to solve their Notre Dame Miami issues. Not saying it's going to happen, but I don't think it's a crazy possibility.
Okay.
Sorry to add to your worries there, Mike.
Some hypotheticals here for you, but no, yeah, I'm all good, man. But hey, I know you got to run here, so before you go, as always, we really appreciate all your knowledge, Stephen, in your prediction here, going out on the limb. Will you tell the cousins how to follow you and how to find your work?
Absolutely. You can read my work over at athlonsports.com. I've got a preview of the SEC championship game coming, playoff projections. Mike, I'll try and shoot you some bowl projections before we get to the end of the weekend, but all that's going to be updated up at Athlon Sports, and you can follow me over on Twitter at Athlon Steven L CFB over on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all the cousins, especially you crazy Texas and Oklahoma people battling in the comments for the last 90 minutes. We'll be back with Cousin Shane at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central to do a mailbag question. So if you haven't already, get your mailbag question over in on the YouTubes. Official cousins always get their questions answered. But until then, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.